Hey guys, Cody with CJC Off-Road. Today's video is gonna be answering one of the most asked questions that we got lately, and that is, what is the difference between the Pathfinder 2.5 shock package as it compares to the Backcountry 2.0s? Now, if you're new to this channel, essentially a few months back, Carli Suspension released the Pathfinder 2.5 shock packages for their whole suspension system lineup. What that is going to be their own in-house 2.5 production shock. Now, for the longest time, we had the Commuter, which was a 2.0 non-reservoir, the Backcountry shock package, which was a 2.0 shock with the reservoir, and then we had the King Pin Top 2.5s. So the Pathfinder kind of shoves itself right between the Backcountry 2.0 and the Pin Top 2.5 shock package. It's easy for me to stand here and talk about what the differences are, but we wanted to show you guys the physical differences. So we took a Super Duty, put it on the 4.5-inch Backcountry 2.0 system. So again, it's going to be a 2.0 or 2-inch diameter reservoir shock. Again, that's going to be the Carli Backcountry 2.0 system. We took it and filmed it both on the highway and off highway. And then in the dirt, we swapped in the Pathfinder 2.5-inch diameter shocks and then took it over the same sections to show you guys exactly what the differences would be and how that would affect you physically as the driver and owner of that specific suspension system. Right off the bat, let's just jump into the physical differences between the shocks. Obviously, as I mentioned, the Backcountry is a 2.0 diameter shock. The Pathfinder is a 2.5-inch diameter shock. I'll get into the main benefits of that in a second. However, there's a few other key differences that actually make the Pathfinder 2.5, in my mind, a little bit better bang for the buck. One of those is going to be the bushings on the ends of the shocks. So for the Backcountry 2.0s, you have a rubber bushing with a sleeve going through that. Pretty industry-wide standard for a replacement shock for a truck, bushing sleeve, bam, it mounts to the truck, etc. Moving over to the Pathfinder 2.5, it has more of a race style setup where it uses a metal uniball type bearing in the end. And what that's going to do is essentially yield you a longer lifespan out of that uniball versus a bushing setup. And again, for those keeping tally here, just another nod to the Pathfinder 2.5 and why it is a more expensive shock package. Now, one cool feature about both of these shocks, Carli Suspension, is very particular on how they outfit their systems. Both of these shock packages are going to have a braided hose, so it's a high quality hose connecting the reservoir to the shock body. So you have no worries about that tearing, bursting, or anything like that. Something that's not, something that's overlooked on a lot of the more basic shock package or when looking at cheaper, reservoir shocks. Speaking of reservoirs, one of the main benefits of a reservoir for a shock is going to be the cooling capacity and the oil capacity that reservoir allows. When you do have that greater cooling capacity, that greater oil capacity, you're able to put more tuning, more valving into the shock. On a very basic non-reservoir shock, you start to put a little bit more resistance into the tuning. That shock is going to overheat very quickly and therefore no longer offer the damping that you're looking for. So that is one of the main benefits of the reservoir. Now that we got that out of the way, let's look at how this actually affects you as the buyer. The Backcountry 2.0 system was designed around street use with a little bit of weekend warrior dirt activity, and it's going to work very well in those instances. Going straight down the road, minor imperfections, manhole covers, things like that. A Backcountry setup with the full springs in the rear is essentially going to flow over all of that. Where the Pathfinder 2.5 is going to be a notch above that is going to be in the control situation where, say, you're doing 40 miles an hour up, I'll just throw that random number out there, and you swerve the truck. The Pathfinder 2.5, because of that bigger piston, is going to offer a little bit more control when it comes to body roll, leaning, and things like that in those instances. Again, that's not to say the Backcountry 2.0 leans or dives or anything like that. It does not. But when we're splitting the hairs between the differences, the Pathfinder 2.5 system is just going to offer that higher level of control. Then you've got guys with loads in the rear, campers, camper shells, tents, whatever. The 2.5 is going to, diameter shock's going to show itself even more in those situations by cutting that sway, cutting that rolling and leaning down. And it's going to work very well in all those instances. As the old adage goes, there's no replacement for displacement, and that is where the 2.5 shock package is really going to shine. Now, with that said, you have your stock ride quality. So for those of you who have bought stock trucks and are watching this video, a stock Super Duty, a stock Ram, those trucks ride better than years before, but it's still pretty abysmal. The Backcountry system is still going to be a huge improvement over that. It's just the Pathfinder is going to be the next step above that, and that's reflected in the cost, right? You get more for your money. You know, at a certain point, there's diminishing returns. However, the Pathfinder 2.5, if within budget, there's essentially no downside minus having to spend a little bit more. Now let's turn our attention to the off-highway driving. Now the Backcountry is named the Backcountry. The system was designed to cruise down fire roads, take you to your shooting spot, hunting spot, skiing spot, whatever. And the Backcountry setup is gonna allow you to hit these roads, say 30 miles an hour in complete comfort, no worries. You know, you can hit the small washouts and things like that, and the truck's gonna stay composed and it's gonna ride really well. As comparison, the Pathfinder setup, that's gonna allow you to say hit that same road you were doing 30 on in the Backcountry, I'd say at 50 miles per hour, and say you hit, you know, a little bit bigger of a washout, the truck's gonna stay a little bit more composed in those situations. That's not to say, especially if you already own a Backcountry system and you've flogged it pretty good off-road, that shock cannot handle it. It's just that you're gonna get a little bit less of those rebound bounces after it, a little bit less of the dives, and just have the truck feel a little bit more composed with the Pathfinder 2.5 setup. With all that said, if you've watched some of our videos and you want to take your Super Duty and Ram and send it next to your buddy's Razor, Sandrail, or whatever, that is where you're going to kind of see the limitations of the Pathfinder 2.5 valving, and you might want to look at the Pintop 2.5 Dominator system, so on, and we have a lot of videos talking about that. With all that said, if you're watching this video and you're like 99% of us and you just want your Super Duty to work for you during the week, you want to take the kids camping, that's where the Backcountry setup works really well. You know, it's going to ride very well on road. Off highway, you'll be able to cruise to your camping site or with your trailer hooked up or whatever. Again, I'd say 30 miles down a dirt road. But in these video clips that you've seen in this video, there is an easy 20 mile per hour difference between the Backcountry shock package and the Pathfinder 2.5. And, you know, obviously with either setup, we could have driven them faster, but the goal here is kind of show you where the comfort point is with either shock package and kind of, you know, show in a layman's terms or kind of what your application would be, what the differences is between the shock packages. So if you are loading down the truck with a ton of weight, if you do have a, you know, drawer system in the back with a camper shell or a rooftop tent or even like a Go Fast camper or a four-wheel camper or whatever, you want to look at the 2.5 inch diameter shocks. It's just going to yield better control for you as the driver and, you know, consumer of the product. It's just going to be a better overall option. And that's kind of where the Pathfinder is a cool option in our overall product line, because before you had the Backcountry and the Pintop, which had a pretty sizable product cost difference between the two. And the Pathfinder kind of shoves right in there and tries to kind of bridge that gap and bring 2.5 shocks to a lot more guys, you know, who are price point conscious. And that's where we find this to be a very cool option for a lot of people out there. I guess at the end of this, all to say, if you can afford the Pathfinder system, you will not regret it. You will not say this is too much shock, it's too rough on road. It really is designed to pretty much make all users happy. If you want to jump the truck, still look at the Pintop Dominator. But again, the only downside of the Pathfinder 2.5 system, quite frankly, is just going to be the increase in cost. You know, and I would say the cool thing about a Carli suspension system is because of all the modular add-ons that you can do at a later time. If, say, you're looking at the Backcountry with a sway bar or doing the Pathfinder system, I would say just jump to the Pathfinder system and do the sway bar at a later date, because that at least gets you into the bigger shock packages as the foundation for your truck, and then add the overall upgrades at a later date. With all that said, if I didn't answer your question, feel free to comment down below, shoot us an email, give us a phone call. We'll be happy to help you out. I do want to mention that if you do call in, all of our sales staff pretty much drives these trucks. So there's multiple guys that have Super Duties with Pintops and Pathfinders. So feel free to call in and pick the owner's brain if you do have any more questions that I didn't answer here today. I hope you liked the video. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and we'll see you guys in the next one.